Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Hightown Season 3, Episode 4. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, let's start off with Jackie's side of the story. Obviously, after finding Petey's body at the end of last episode, she's called the cops in, which they've got a lot of questions for her. Obviously, to kind of smooth things over, she's like, yeah, I'm with state police. It's like, well, technically, you're not anymore right now. So, well, it's not even a technicality about it. You are not a cop right now. So, luckily, she called Alan because she knew, like, well, the fact is that she doesn't. Ray has going to bat to her before, but the last time she reached out to him last episode after kind of brushing him aside because she was so wrapped up in this whole Veronica thing that she didn't think Ray would probably help her now, and he'd probably ignore her saying like, yo, get your crap together first. So Alan comes through, and he's also like, I'm not going to get caught up in all this BS. The fact of the matter is you're going to be honest with me. So it's like, right, I know Petey looking for this girl I hooked up with. Petey was my dad's dealer, but also was mine. So I came here trying to follow all this stuff through. And for him, he's like, at the end of the day, I'm not going to sit here and like coddle you about your sobriety and stuff like that. Because he's like, at the end of the day, I don't care. He's like, I mean, he does acknowledge like, hey, you've got good instincts, but maybe you might not ever become a state cop again until you like, and you need to figure yourself out. Later on, it's like, take your stink self home, take a bath, and like clear your head out. Because he ended up telling this story about this guy who was like a big time like drug person too. And it was just like out of the blue, the guy just randomly had a come to Jesus moment. He was just like, they were getting away with a score, and he was just like, yo, pull over, and he never took drugs again. He says like, right, some people just have that come to Jesus moment out of anywhere, and the fact of the matter is, it's like, it could happen to you, or, you know, he even says like, in a very effed up way, he's just kind of like, yeah, in the grand scheme of things, the world also needs bad examples. So even if you're not a good example, like, oh, this is where I was and this is who I ended up becoming, you know, after, you know, continuing my sobriety, or you could just be the cautionary tale of, you don't want to be a Jackie, you know, situation, which she was like, thanks. I was like, it was kind of like, it seemed to be like a motivating, it seemed like it was supposed to be motivating, but at the same time, it's like you kind of screwed the pooch on the speech. But Alan just making the point, like, right, you never know like how it could all play out. You could never end up being sober, but all you can do is just chill and like, I'll handle things for now. And so, but Jackie can't let this go because once again, she fixates on stuff because that's the only way that's keeping. Because she'd even tell this story where she was like, I knew at 17. I should never drink anything. I think she said something like that. Like, I should never drink, but it didn't stop me from drinking. She knows, like, she's predisposed to a lot of this stuff because either she had already had an incident where it showed, like, oh, when I down some alcohol, I can end up in a spiral, or just because, like, no, I've seen my dad. Which I think that's so interesting. That's just one element of the show. I think they dabbled in it last season, but, like, they haven't really covered much with her dad, if I'm not mistaken. They did. Didn't they cast her dad last season? I feel like I'm forgetting that entire storyline. So, I completely don't remember, because I do feel like, yeah, I think I vaguely remember her meeting up with her dad, because doesn't he have like a new woman in his life and stuff like that? I don't know. I don't remember. I think she was like in a bad spot with Ed, and she stayed with her dad for a little bit last season. Someone correct me in the comments down below, because my memory's horrendous. But I don't know, I just thought that was kind of interesting, like, bringing that back in like that, because I feel like we didn't get a lot with her dad last season, maybe a little bit, like, mentions here and there, and maybe he popped up 1 or 2 episodes, but I don't think it wasn't, like, a bit part, but it was just, like, a small part in just, like, where Jackie was in her story, and I think just the parallels between her and dad, if I'm remembering any of that at all correct. Either way, because of what she brought up in the conversation, Alan was able to bring in Swayze, and it ends up questioning him, and Jackie gets to watch, and he doesn't own up to the Veronica, but the moment Maxine got brought up in the conversation, which we don't know what her circumstances were, we get a little peek at the article that talked about her, like, she was last seen, like, what was it, like 11:30 at night or something like that, and then just, we didn't really go into the specifics of how she died or what. I guess it's just an unsolved murder, but The moment she got mentioned, because Swayze was saying like Veronica asked her about it, yada yada yada, and now with the end of the episode, we kind of understand why Swayze had that perspective on things. But Maxine, he clamored up real quick. He's like, no, you're not gonna pin that on me, meaning he knows who did it most likely. That's why I'm still thinking that cop last episode. I'm like, he must. I get the feeling like that cop has something to do with it. So this episode is so interesting because now it makes you second guess everything about this. Like, oh, is there some grand conspiracy? It doesn't change the fact this Maxine was murdered. There are a whole bunch of women that have been murdered, sadly. Like, but that's the thing of like, because I was thinking like Maxine might have been, a prostitute, but she might not have been. She might not have been a sex worker. She might have just been just a everyday person. We don't know. So, because a lady knew her, but it could just be like, oh, because we find, Maxine's a black girl, so it could be a thing of, no, like, the person Jackie talked to last episode was black too, so it's like, I'm going to take notice of when black girls get murdered. So that's why I'm like, I don't know if she's someone in their line of work, or maybe she knew Maxine just from, like, the neighborhood or something. I don't know. But either way, it like I said, the episode brings into question like how much of this is some grand conspiracy and how much of this is some cover up and some killer that's getting away with stuff. Maybe that it just is it the sad reality of it is what it is and that won't be resolved, or is there more to it? Like Swayze's reaction makes me think he knows who's behind it and he doesn't want to take the fall for someone else's BS. But either way, like there's not much they can do. Alan can't really do much. You can put a patrol out in front of Emma's place. That's about it. So you have Jackie go over to Emma's place and trying to look after her, make sure she's okay. And it's like, yo, who's in the room? Is it Swayze? I was like, what's going on here? And lo and behold, who is it? Veronica. I was like, yo, I love that twist, because I would have never thought this story would have taken. I think that's such good, like, sleight of hand there, because I would have never seen that storyline twist coming. I'm like, oh, she's perfectly fine. It's like, oh, the black eye, did Swayze give it to you? It's like, no, you did. Like, when I tried to leave, you wouldn't let me go and you punched me. So it's like she stole Jackie's car and everything to get away from her. It's like, yo. And in that moment, she's like, oh, what, were you going to be my white knight and save me? You can't save anyone. You're pathetic. And it's just like that moment. I'm like, this is Jackie's come to Jesus moment. Like, she's hit rock bottom before, but this is something else. Because, I mean, the thing is, her drugs have not stopped her from, like, has gotten in her way before him, where her getting high and making the decision to get high or drunk or whatever has led to fallout and cause other people to have issues. But now it's a situation of, like, because she was so certain, like, okay, something happened to her, I need to make sure she's okay. It's like, yeah, she's okay when she's away from you. It's like, yes, Swayze might not be a good guy, but it's like, in this moment, like, you punched her in the face, you gave her the black eye. It's like, yo, like, you were, like, probably no wonder, like, even besides just being on a bender, probably why, like, you don't remember any of that time is because you probably suppressed a lot of that shit. Now it almost makes you question that dream she had last episode before she went into the water and she was bleeding out of her nose, like, in the pool. It's like, what was she doing? She was looking back at Jackie, so it's like, I don't know if that's probably me going back and reading too much into that, but it's like, there's some subtle thing where you can make some parallel where you're like, maybe they were trying to give you a sign even back then. Probably not. Once again, I'm probably reading way too much into it, but I just that rock bottom moment. I mean, once again, does not change the fact that Swayze is probably a piece of shit. Not probably, definitely is. And doesn't change the fact that Maxine's death and everything. But for Jackie, it's like, I thought I had this great purpose of helping you, and it's just like, because before now, like, when she's tried to help people, it might not have worked out, but she was in the right to help someone. And it's like, this person didn't need your help. In fact, they were trying to get away from you because you lost your shit. And it's just like, in that moment, she goes to Ed, and it's just like, I don't want to be this person anymore. Like, either I'm going to hurt myself or, like, something's going to happen to me, but I just can't live like this anymore. And, of course, Ed's going to be there to offer her help. So he takes her to that, I guess, that kind of house for people, so that they get, like, almost like a place you can check yourself in, to kind of, I guess, a rehab of sorts. And it's just like, man, that's rough. But I think it's good for Jackie. Like, this might mean, like, before we end the series, we might see Jackie on the up and up. I mean, that's the sad thing about any addiction. Like, that could always spring back in life. Once again, it's all about, it's never a surefire thing. All it is about giving yourself the tools necessary to never find yourself in that position where you are in either the drugs or whatever your vice may be. It's about having the tools to kind of avoid your triggers and any temptation, you know? So we'll see where Jackie's story kind of goes from there. But I guess that's why Emma was kind of ignoring her the entire time, is because she found Veronica's like, oh, that bitch, like, she's crazy, isn't she? Is like, so that's probably why, like, Emma was like avoiding her the entire time. And that's probably, she probably specifically chose Swayze. That's why Swayze was probably at her place, because she probably found Veronica afterwards and was like, yo, take care of this crazy chick. But that's also why Swayze was probably acting the way he was about the Veronica thing, because he's like, I didn't do anything to her. Also, he must have known she was fine. The reason why he was acting like that, like I said, it wasn't until the Maxine conversation that the whole conversation switched up. So, like I said, we'll have to see whether we circle back to any of that, like whether this is the last we see of Swayze, whether it's the last we see of Emma or Veronica. It might just be, but we'll see. Now let's switch over to Ray's side of things and kind of connect it ultimately to Renee's side of things, where Ray is obviously helping Sarah and the whole situation of luring Tommy in, because he had actually went to go visit Shane and they had their talk, because it's like, yeah, your nephew, he's kind of wild, you run kind of a stealthy operation, and it ends up being that whole conversation from Shane's perspective where it's like, you want me to be in play, because the moment I'm removed from the equation, someone worse is going to step in, and like the way I operate, yeah, but things might be bloody a little bit early on, but things are eventually going to calm down. The simile or metaphor he used was, I'm like a boulder being thrown into a pond. There's going to be ripples for a while, but eventually the water calms down. And that's what you want me to be, because if I'm removed from the equation, someone much worse could easily step in and you have an even bigger problem. But me in play, you know, I'm the devil you know versus the devil you don't. So, and I just love like him and Ray's back and forth, and just like how like smug, like when Ray puts on that like smug smile when he's trying to be so in control and stuff like that. So even that little middle finger at the end, like, oh, best ice cream on a cape. He's like, yeah, actually, it's this other place. But you would know that, but except you're a visitor. You're not, you're not a local. I was like, ugh, just doing the little shithead jabs that he could do. But obviously, you could tell Ray's getting caught up even more with Sarah as she's like texting Owen to kind of like get him like hopped up. He texted a dick pic. I'm like, dude, why do we keep doing this? It's like, Jesus, is once again, we can imply the dick pic without having to see it. Like, Jesus. It's like, once again, it's just, I think it's funny how like much Wang I've been seeing in TV lately. It's just the craziest. Specifically, like, like your networks, like your Stars or your streaming shows or like your HBOs. Well, it's just like stuff that isn't like more network television, stuff that isn't network television, and just been seeing a lot more Wang, and it's like, it's funny because it catches me off guard. I'm just not expecting it. Either way, I keep bringing this point up every time because it kind of gets me every time. Either way, but the moment she's texting stuff back and she's telling Ray what she's texting to, you could tell he's getting all hot and bothered by it. So, and then also her flashing her boobs, which, once again, the part of my brain, I guess to, like, stop it from being, like, very sexualized in my head, I kind of desexualize it a little bit. There's a part of my brain that's like, does the actress who plays Sarah actually have her nipples pierced? I'd assume so. Because at first I was like, I mean, they wouldn't go that far for a production, like, being like, oh, let's give this character some characteristics. It's probably like, no, the actress probably really has her nipples pierced. But either way, like I said, it's just one of those stupid things that like crossed my mind for a moment, just so I don't feel so pervy, like being like, oh, like sexualize the situation a little bit by getting caught up in like the thought process of like, is that a production thing or just naturally her nipples are just naturally pierced? Either way, tangents and all that aside, but before I switch over to Renee's stuff, I do want to finish. Well, it all ties in. So I thought it was interesting that Renee and Osito had a scene together, which I was like, that's so interesting. It's like, hey, here we both are this is us both living it up, doing it pretty good for ourselves post our Frankie arc. And I almost feel like that's probably the only scene they're gonna have together the entire final season. But I think it's so interesting. It's like, yo, what are you doing? It's like, oh, I'm working. Like, you gotta do whatever you gotta do to eat. And it's like, she's like, well, I'm not in that gang anymore. He's like, really? Come on. I know you doing your game. You know, Renee. Well, as he calls her, Renee, kind of shortening her name. But it's like, you were by Frankie's side, so I know you know how to run this game. But she tries to lie and be like, nah, I'm married to I'm with a cop, and we have a child together, which Osido's almost like, all right, so I guess you really are out of the game. But also, I think he genuinely meant it when he was like, no, congrats. Like, I hope you're happy, just because I hope life is treating you well in a grand scheme of things. So, but either way, this all ties into Rachel, who ended up finally finding the money. Like I said, I brought it. I was talking about last episode. It took me a second to be like, what is she looking for? Then I was like, well, the only thing of value there would be the money. But I didn't even correlate in my head, like, what would Frankie do with Jorge's money? I was like, you're going to use that to kind of prove anything? I was like, I don't think you could. But it wasn't until the recap at the beginning of the episode where the lawyer was like, oh, we need some money to grease some palms. Which I thought they were greasing palms. I didn't know they were straight up just hiring a hitman, but that was probably his lawyer kind of dancing around the topic, most likely. And like I said, I didn't fully remember the context of the scene until they recapped it at the beginning. But I was like, oh, okay. So Rachel found the money and bounced. And then Renee comes home worried because like her neighbor saw the door was wide open, went over, found Frank Jr. and Scarlett. I was like, okay, I don't think Rachel would be stupid enough to kidnap them. But it's like, well, she stole the money, and it's like not like Renee could really report that. Because she'd have to admit where she got the money from. It's like, where's this like buttload of money coming from? So it's like, can't really report that. And then Rachel had to like stick it to her a little bit by being like, telling Frankie, it's like, yeah, he's handsome just like his father. In that moment, Renee's like, it was Frankie. So she calls up Ray. And she's trying to be like, don't be mad at me. Once again, like, he knows about the Jorge stuff, but he doesn't know. And I think he doesn't know that she took his money. I mean, he obviously didn't know this entire time. Also didn't know what she was doing. So that little business enterprise of yours kind of got cut short because she was using the money from Jorge to buy her drugs. And now that's kind of kaput. So now it's like, you put yourself in a very complicated position now. It's like, well, to be fair, this is your mom's fault because your mom's the one who introduced you to Rachel. But to be fair, it's also on you because you didn't do your own due diligence. It's like, you were even calling your mom like, oh, I'm going to have some stranger watch my babies? Yeah, oh, great trial run. It worked out. So, oh, yeah, second time babysitting, boom, she ends up doing this. So it's like, Renee's probably beating herself up, especially because she's like, whatever this is, it's most likely going to help Frankie, and that's going to screw me over in the long run. Which we find out, yep, he hired a hit person who ended up killing Chilado. So now his testimony isn't enough to keep Frankie in jail, and he's most likely going to walk. And if the moment he gets out, that's going to be an issue for Renee because he knows for a fact she killed Jorge, and it's like, okay, so I'm coming after you, you know. So I'm gonna get my son away from you. That could be, you know, I definitely feel like the way this story's going, I can definitely see like either Renee's gonna put him down or Ray's gonna end up putting him down, but like Frankie ain't surviving this. Like, you know, he barely made it out of season 2, but I think Frankie's going to bite it this season just because how big and important like Frankie has been Ray's white whale for so long that it's like, I need to take that bastard down, especially because the conversation he's having with Sarah of, even when you locked him up, they'll eventually get out. Like, I wasted 15 years of my life, and did it destroy Frankie's life? Nah, I just destroyed mine in the process. I think that, you know, that's why his relationship with his son is shitty. It blew up his marriage. It's like a lot of stuff went wrong, and he's kind of the hot mess he is in a lot of ways. I mean, even the trouble we've seen him mixed up in over the course of this show has been in correlation or some relation to Frankie, you know? So, and how does Ray deal with that? Well, him and Sarah hook up, and you're like, well, I knew that was coming. I was so hopeful that, hey, he wouldn't go through with it, especially when she was like, hey, I don't have to go to Owen tonight. I could be there for you and help you. And he's like, nah, you got plenty of time. You should go. I was like, okay. I was like, good on you, Ray. And she touched his lap, and I was like, fuck. 3 seconds later, cuts to the scene of them fucking. You're like, well, that happened. And I was like, of course it did. So I'm like, you blowing up your life, Ray. I mean, to be fair, you're stressed. I'm not trying to justify it, but like, I shouldn't say like, well, you're stressed. I'm not trying to justify. I'm like, you're going to use anything. You are already teetering. You needed this as an excuse to nudge you towards something you wanted to do already. It's not like anyone forced your hand like, oh, she seduced you. It's like, no, you already wanted to, and you were just looking for any cracks in the situation to give you an excuse to do it. So once again, just the parallels between him and Jackie, where it's just like, I think Jackie's going to get help in the long run and become a better person, whereas Ray, just like Alan and Home Dude were talking about in the previous episode, you are going to, like, Ray's going to fuck himself in this situation. And especially because it's all, once again, like, his connection to Renee, and if she gets found out to be the one responsible for Jorge's death, like, that's going to end up dragging Ray down too. That also depends on, because it's going to bring into question, well, how much did you know, and when did you know what and when? His career probably won't recover from it, and it's just like, he's going to be on the shitter, whereas Alan and Jackie will be on the up. I could definitely see that being, I don't know. We'll see. Not everyone's going to walk away from the show have a happy ending. As crime dramas, they rarely do, but just the nature of these characters and these stories, I just don't see that happening. Now, putting all that aside, we have to shift over to kind of tying in Owen, Shane, Osito, and Frankie, because I was wondering, like, how is Frankie going to use this Janelle situation to his benefit. So he ends up getting in contact with the whites. It's like, hey, I'm not your issue. You guys were running things here in the yard until the blacks took over, and now they're running things because I have stuff on the outside. So I know Shane's not too happy. So tell your boss to call me up. They talk. He ends up giving him some information. I don't know what he's getting from Shane in the long run. I mean, it benefits him because it's like, well, the Osito issue is both of our problems, but also, like, what is he going to get from Shane in the long run? I don't know if it's like Frankie's like setting up a situation, a partnership, like the moment he's able to get out, that they work together, or I don't know what he's going to, because he told Shane, like, oh, I'll help you, like, I'll decide what I want later on, so we'll see where that goes. But Shane called up Owen because Owen was looking for an opportunity to wipe out Osito. You knew it was going to go bad because, like, Janelle was telling him, like, yo, we should just go away. But he's like, hey, like, the only, like, just because a little heat's my direction, I can't just run away every time, like, some heat comes my way. You know, I've got a business to run. And he was trying to lay low. He was smart about laying low in the aftermath of last episode. Because it wasn't even Owen who figured it out. It was actually Shane who was like, yeah, are you sure? Like, you haven't seen that milk crate kid? Are you sure? Like, either you hired an idiot or you hired a liar. Because, I mean, Shane's been in the game for a hot minute, so he can smell a setup. It's like, the timing's a little too interesting. Like, there's too many coincidences in this situation. But either way, I did like that setup where it's like, Osito and Home Dude switched cars, so when Owen was ready to roll up on him, it wasn't Osito in the car. I was like, ooh. It's still one of Osito's boys, but I don't know if he knew that. But even if it was, it would have drawn unnecessary tension, and it would give Osito an excuse to be able to pop back. So, because his dad, not his dad, his uncle, Shane had told him, like, right, the organization only runs because of Osito. Like, he's so confident in himself, that's going to be his undoing, because he only trusts himself with this operation, and without the head of this operation, his operation doesn't know how to operate without him, and without their king, it's going to fall. And so Owen rolls up on Osito and Janelle. I was like, damn, Janelle's going to end up dying. Because I thought the whole plan was like, oh, let's kill Janelle, but it's like, no, go, like, follow Janelle, because eventually she'll, like, lead you to Osito. I think that was the point of it. I thought they were going to use her as like, either kill her just to get back at Osito, or use her as like a hostage or something. It's like, nah, let's like just follow you back to Osito. And they probably, because I'm assuming that's Janelle's place. Well, they do have a place of their own, so not unless that was like Janelle's place, or that was the place they were at earlier in the episode. I don't think it was. Maybe it was. But either way, it popped off. Yo, Osito caught like one in like the stomach. He also caught one in like the eye. You're like, Jesus. It's like, is Osito dead? I mean, he still like looked like he was hanging on. Is he gonna go a little, is he gonna pull a Wilson Fisk here or what? So some very, very interesting developments. It's going to be interesting to see what the aftermath of all of this is going to be, or all of this is going to take us going forward into the next episode. We are in the end, well, somewhat the end game. We got 3 more episodes left of the series. I'm excited to see where the next episode takes us. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and good